the Nonprofit Podcast, powered by Donorbox.
Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you keep postponing a task only for it to snowball into a bigger problem? Laundry, for instance. I'll put it off until there are absolutely no other options. But then I'm left with an overwhelming task before me, and it feels like it takes forever to get everything back in order. Well, as we marathon into the month of May, maybe it's not laundry that's doing this to you, or maybe it is, but maybe it's something else. There just might be something lurking within your nonprofit that needs some attention, and now might be just the right time to tackle it. Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast. I'm Kara, fundraising coach at Donorbox. We are here each week with practical actions you can use today to increase donations and take your nonprofit to the next level tomorrow. Jenna, our nonprofit advocate at Donorbox, is joining me again this week as we kick off May with some tips for tidying your nonprofit systems and hopefully some encouragement to get it done. Welcome, Jenna.
Hey, Kara. Thanks for hosting me as always. You are so spot on with the laundry analogy. I'm actually staring at a big pile of laundry right now. But nonprofits are really so much more than the sum of their parts, right? They're like an ecosystem where each piece is necessary for the whole thing to work well. But when you neglect one part, it can throw off the whole system. So how can we avoid letting this happen?
Well, let's get started on the nitty-gritty of tidying up your nonprofit systems. The first step is to run a nonprofit financial audit. Now, I know that the word audit might sound really intimidating, but don't worry, it's not as scary as it sounds. Running a nonprofit audit is one of the best ways to build donor trust and show transparency and get your nonprofit in order. So where do you start? Well, some nonprofits are required to conduct an external audit by law because of the size of their organization or the amount of money they raise. Others are not required, but it still might be a good idea. In my experience, it's not intimidating at all. It's actually some really good proactive work that helps keep things in order. A nonprofit audit examines the financial records, the bank accounts, business transactions, accounting principles, and internal controls within a nonprofit organization. And I was at a national nonprofit, and we hired an accounting firm that specialized in nonprofits to come in for a week each year to take a look at our processes and financials. They took samples. They took sample entries from the books, sample donation entries, and then the backup that came with them. They walked through what it looks like when a donation comes in the door, like who collects the mail and how the information is secured. They worked to complete our Form 990 on our behalf, and they wrote a report full of recommendations. And then year over year, our processes became tighter and just kept improving. And so our board's responsibility was to read the report and provide any governance support around those recommendations. And our board also had an audit committee with a few members who were a little more closely involved in the process. And now this was a case that the financial audit was required by the IRS, but it really might be a good proactive investment in the health of any organization for sure. And regular audits can be a good long-term process for your organization. And we have a great resource for you, and it's linked in the show notes. We created a free nonprofit audit checklist for you to see what you might need to get yourself prepped for a financial audit, what kind of documents to pull, what kind of reports to look at. So that might be helpful to you as you start thinking about whether or not it's a good fit for your organization.
Awesome. I know that will be helpful to a lot of folks. Now, Kara, you just mentioned the board of directors.
Mm-hmm.
So while we're talking about the importance of staying organized and running a tight ship, I want to dive into another crucial aspect of nonprofit management, which would be having an effective board of directors. So I know you've got some great insights, or maybe not some, a bunch of great insights and tips on this topic. So I'll pass it on.
I think we could probably do a year's worth of podcasts about nonprofit boards. It might put everyone to sleep, but there are so many ins and outs. But if we're talking about keeping processes clean, I think I would just make 3 recommendations about what to tackle and then do it annually. And so these would be my must-dos.
Yes, let's hear them.
Okay. So Jenna, I loved what you said a little bit ago, that nonprofits are like ecosystems, and that's true. And then the board of directors is a really critical component of that system. So to our listeners, ask yourselves, is your board being run the way it should? it's important to understand the key responsibilities of nonprofit board members to ensure your organization is being led in the best possible way. And there are 3 things I'd ensure that I would do annually. First, spend some time looking at the roles and responsibilities you've identified for your board. And have you formalized these? Are they relevant today as much as they were when they were written? Are they shared during board onboarding? And these responsibilities and the role explanations will be unique to each organization, but they typically include expectations on meeting attendance, introducing outsiders to the organization, raising or giving money, and then expectations around participation on board committees or events. And if you've identified them, that's really great. You're ready to move on to the next step, evaluating. If you haven't, go ahead and pause and make sure that you are working on those roles and responsibilities and really formalizing them. So we'll talk next about evaluating. And so evaluating your board can be as simple as a board self-assessment using a Google form, or as complex as hiring a third party to interview you and your board members and review the structures you have in place. And then I would also recommend, I guess this would be the third recommendation, annually meet for at least a half day or full day or more for a planning retreat where you review your mission and your vision, and then the objectives or goals that you have in place for the year ahead, and you're all collaborating around those. And I'm speaking from experience here. Keep those objectives in front of the board at every single meeting. You don't want to get to the next board planning retreat and say, oh, what did we say we'd work on this year? Because I've been there and it was a year that was completely wasted. We learned from it and we're really on top of things since. So, those are my 3 must-dos for kind of keeping your board in shape. But that's enough for me. I want to turn it over to you, Jenna. We've talked about the importance of the nonprofit financial audit. We talked about effective board of directors and keeping systems clean there. But in your opinion, what else can organizations do to ensure that they're maximizing their fundraising potential? Because that's another big must-do for any nonprofit organization. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, just as your board of directors is essential to the operations of your nonprofit, so are your donors in so many ways, right? We always say they are your lifeblood. And it's so important to understand their behavior to build those strong, lasting relationships that we all need and want. And one way to do that is by analyzing your donor and gift data. And I hope that your eyes didn't just glaze over when I said data. I know Kara and I are always excited about data, but it's so important. So let's say you've recently launched a new fundraising campaign, maybe in Q1 or whatever that may be, and you're excited to see how it's performing. But how do you measure its success in a real way? So analyzing your donor and gift data is a really great place to start. So by examining factors like donation amount, frequency, your donor demographics, and you can gain these really valuable insights into what's working and what's not. It's May, so you should know what's working, what's not by this time, right? So for instance, let's say you notice that a particular campaign is attracting a lot of new donors. That's great, but their average gift size is lower than what you were expecting. And this could be a sign that you need to adjust your messaging or targeting to attract more of those high value donors. Or on the other hand, if you see that your most regular donors are giving less frequently, or that some donors that you know really well have lapsed, it might be time to re-engage them with some really targeted and thoughtful communications. So by analyzing your donor and gift data regularly, you can stay on top of these trends and make those data-driven decisions to improve your fundraising outcomes, which can save you time, money, and even some campaign headaches, in the long run for the rest of the year.
It can, and it really is amazing how much you can learn from your donor and gift data and how it can really help target those communications, which helps grow relationships. Yeah. So how do you get started with analyzing this data?
Well, there are a few key steps. First, you'll want to make sure that you're actually tracking all of these relevant data points, right?
Data in, data out. Yeah.
Yeah, you bet. So this might include things like donor contact information, right? Gift amount and date, and any relevant demographics or giving history. So you can choose these data points that you know will be important to you. you, which means that you need fundraising software that has the ability to capture this information. So whether it's on your donation form and you can add in custom fields, you should be able to do that. And then once you have this data, you need to organize and analyze it to identify those trends and insights. So there are a variety of tools and software solutions available to help with this, including Donorbox's reporting templates, which provide really easily accessible insights into your donation activity and trends right there on your dashboard, such as a new donor report, a donor overview, and even a LiveBunt report, which can be really, really helpful. And then finally, of course, once you've got these insights, you can make those data-driven decisions about your fundraising strategy and tactics, as I mentioned earlier.
Yep, connecting the dots.
Yep.
And once you have your data, you'll want to ensure you're making the most of it. And that's where Donorbox's live demos come in. I take time to watch the demo every now and then, just so I know that I'm up to date with how to use Donorbox. Tell us a little bit more about our new monthly Donorbox demo.
So I guess this is our next tip for tidying up. So we are now offering a monthly Donorbox product deep dive every first Friday of the month. We chose first Fridays because that's easy to remember. Each 30-minute session will focus on a different theme or product feature, and our product experts will walk you through the latest Donorbox features like event ticketing or reporting or peer-to-peer best practices and tips and tricks to take your fundraising to the next level. And attending these sessions is a really great opportunity to get answers to any questions you may have and ensure that you're fully equipped to achieve your fundraising goals with confidence. And if you are a Donorbox user, this is really great. And if you're not, this will show you everything that Donorbox has to offer. So for those interested, you can find the link to sign up for these monthly demos and learn more in the show notes.
That does sound like a fantastic opportunity for our listeners to learn more about how they can make the most out of Donorbox. I know I'll be attending some of these first Fridays too.
And for our listeners, if you have any specific topics you'd like to see covered in the upcoming demos, please feel free to reach out to us at podcast@donorbox.org. That's PODCAST at DONORBOX.org. We always love to hear from you and want to make sure that we're providing the content that's the most valuable to you.
We're always looking for ways to improve and provide the most relevant and useful information to our listeners. Thank you, Jenna. And we are grateful for you, our listeners. Thank you for choosing to spend time with the Nonprofit Podcast. I hope you've left with the confidence to take a small step today that will make a big difference tomorrow. But before you move on to the next thing on your to-do list, will you take just a few seconds to click the download button on your podcast player, then leave the Nonprofit Podcast a review, or give it a thumbs up if you're listening to the Nonprofit Podcast on YouTube? It will take less time than your laundry, I promise, and your review is really a great way to help others to find us. You're here to help others. We're here to help you. So until next time, stay inspired.
That warm feeling when you help someone, it's not just happiness, it's fulfillment. And we believe it should be available to everyone, from frontline heroes to first-time fundraisers. Our tools empower you to help others. This is our mission. This is Donorbox, helping you help others.